Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I appreciate you guys for clicking on the video. As you can see today, we have Hot Takes and Heresies. It's a new little series I created. Over the last few days, I've been trying to collect some hot takes from some different people from different various platforms, and the intention is to rank them on this tier list and to basically say what are some common hot takes, what are some uncommon hot takes, what are some heresies that we might be holding to, and so today we got 6 on the board. Usually I'm going to try to keep it between 3 to 5. I actually am going to try and have some guests on who can help expound maybe a little bit and help me tier these issues, these hot takes. And before we begin, I wanted to just give a quick little I'm sorry for not being able to put out as much content as I'd like to at this point in time. I wanted to start the new year out just hitting videos out, but unfortunately, as I've started this second semester of my sophomore year, it's been let's say an eye-opener. I haven't had this much homework ever, and so I haven't been able to get the free time to be able to make videos like this, especially the way I want to make them, where I have them well prepped out, or well thought out and prepped. And so I thought, though, I need to get something on the board, and I think the best way to do it is to start with some hot takes and heresies, just to see where I stand on some issues, and then maybe in the comments let me know where you stand on different issues. But before we begin, we need to look at the tiers. So at tier kind of 1, the lowest tier you can go is cold take. Cold take is something that I personally hold to, and when I look at the list, I think it's 95 at the moment. It hopefully will increase. When I look at the list, there's a few of them I would say are takes that I would hold to, that I'd put in that cold take category. Then D tier would be something, or tier 2 would be something that I can hold to. I just particularly don't, because there might be a few different challenges I have with that take. C tier is a little bit more in the realm of me challenging it. I might not believe it nearly as much. B tier is where B and C tier kind of are two sides of a coin. The C tier is the better side. The B tier is a little bit more the worst. To me, B and C are both what I consider to be more heterodox. C being less, B being more. And heterodoxy is just the idea of something that is not putting your salvation at risk, or your assurance of your salvation at risk, but it is something that I would consider to be wrong. And then A tier is very high on the heterodox tier, or very high on the heterodox paradigm, with just blatant on near heresy. And then finally, so hot as heresy being the last tier. That's just the idea that it is something that strikes, or heresy is something that strikes at the core of the gospel. Heresy is something that hits the foundational beliefs of the Christian faith. A heresy would be, the Mormon church is a heretical church because it denies the divinity of Christ at the same level that we, who are Trinitarian Christians, believe. Jehovah's Witnesses are the same way. Pelagians, we'll talk about Pelagianism more on the channel. Pelagians are clear heretics. And so you need to be able to understand that not everything is heresy, but not everything is on the good side of heterodoxy. Like, I think that, for example, as a Reformed Baptist, my Presbyterian friends are heterodox in the sense that they baptize infants. But I would still put that in this, really the D or C tier. I wouldn't put that at the B or A tier. And so you have to be able to triage some of these different beliefs, and to be able to exposit why you hold to what you hold. So that's what I'm trying to do here today. And without further ado, the first one we have is the idea that the 6th commandment extends all the way to animals, or the idea that we cannot murder animals ever. Like, that's just it was a blanket statement. Don't kill animals. And so my first question that I have is, does that include the tiny little insects that we may step on from time to time when they're trying to climb on our legs and bite us? Because unfortunately, I do that all the time. You know, I sometimes I do feel bad about it, and I think that we ought to. But the idea also, I guess, spawning from more of a vegetarian sense, that we should not eat animals ever. And my first response to that is, have you read what the book of Leviticus says to do with any of these offerings? I mean, these offerings are of God. They're like, Leviticus 4 talks about how when you're trying to make a sin atonement, you need to rip out the intestines, take the fat, and and burn it essentially for the bull after getting the blood and throwing it on the altar and all this stuff. And so, in my opinion, you can't do that while keeping the animal alive. You just can't. So either something happened to the text, or you're wrong. And I would be willing to bet that you're wrong. But with that being said, though, I don't think that being a vegetarian is a heresy. I do think, though, that when we try to hold other people to this standard that is not biblical, that's where we get into the line of more of the higher up heterodoxy. So for that, I'm going to put it in a B. I don't think it's an A where it's getting too far, and I don't think it's heresy, but I do think that it's something that that can strike at the core if you were to make it a tier 1 issue. As long as this stays like a tier 4 issue, then I really don't see a massive problem with it. I just would like to say, don't try and force me not to eat meat while you yourself are doing other things, if that makes sense. I think we need to be focused more on the tier 1 issues of baptism, of the Lord's Supper, of maybe some congregational issues that we have within our own church, rather than saying, okay, you eat meat, you're sinning against God. This was never meant to be. Well, God makes it clear that the killing of animals is not inherently sinful. I do believe that the intent behind killing the animals can be. So say, for example, you just want to kill an animal. I don't think that that's right. I think that when you kill something, especially when you kill an animal, there should be a purpose behind it, whether it's defense, whether it's to feed your family, or whether it's to clothe your family. There needs to be a purpose behind what you do. It shouldn't just be out of spite, out of hate, out of a desire to kill. Those things are sinful. So we need to be able to steel man against stuff like that. But our next hot take is theology developed after the New Testament, which to me was an interesting take because I'm kind of half and half. I don't know exactly what this person was trying to portray, but if you're saying that there's no theology in the New Testament, I wholeheartedly disagree. I mean, the New Testament's riddled with the study of God, which is theology. You cannot go through the New Testament books and say there's nothing about God that we can learn. I think what this person is trying to portray is that our Christian terminology came after the New Testament. And I would agree to a degree. I think that there are some things that we have created words and terms for, of course, but I think the ideas were always there, 100%. I mean, it's not, to me, even close. Take the Trinity, a big Muslim pushback, Mormon pushback, Jehovah's Witness pushback is that the term Trinity was not used within the 1st and 2nd century. But in the 3rd century, the theologian Tertullian decided to use the word Trinitas, which, if I'm getting correct, it's Latin, and Latin just means Trinity. But the foundations had always been there. The early church fathers had always used these sort of ideas and principles, even though we didn't systematize it yet. So while I do kind of agree that theology developed after the New Testament, I don't agree that there is no theology in the New Testament. So for that, I'm going to give it a C. I don't think it's the hottest take. I think that it's something that we can kind of agree on, but you need to nuance it and make sure that you're explaining your position well enough to be able to be ranked. The next hot take is the idea that it matters what people think about us. And I'm going to go off the bat and say that this is a cold take. And I need to nuance it a little bit and explain why I believe this a little bit. But essentially what the user is trying to portray is that it's not the principle of being the most popular at school or being the coolest person at school, but rather whether or not we're being ambassadors of Christ to others, in front of others, in public. In like the public spaces, do people know us as Christians? And so I do think that matters. I do think that we need to live Christian lives outside of church. We can't just be a Christian from at like 9 or 11 o'clock in the morning and then rest on Sunday and then just go back to what we were doing on Monday. You should be a Christian every day, every second of the day, which is the hardest part about being a Christian. And so I do think it matters what people think about us is a great emphasis to make. I don't think it's a hot take. I think it's a cold take. I would agree. Living in sin and dragging it around with you and letting it be almost like, those things that in cartoons they have the homeless people carry, which is like the stick, the picnic, a blanket of all their stuff. It's like you're almost carrying around your sin all the time. And when people see that, it either A, makes them feel like you're a hypocrite, or B, gives them the assurance that what they are doing, the sins that they commit, that you're also committing, are fine to do. And while nobody's going to be perfect, the ultimate Christian goal is to live like Jesus, who was perfect. And that's an insane task to complete. But it is something we are called to do. We're called to live every single day, dying to the flesh and taking up the cross daily and following Christ. And so, people should think of us as representatives of Christ, not representatives of sin. And so for that, like I said, it's a cold take. I think I would agree with the take, and I think that we all should embrace the take that, sure, we don't need to be the most popular at school or the coolest kids on the block, but we do need to be ambassadors for Christ everywhere. People should think of us as Christians. Now, the next take is one that I didn't expect to get because I don't really think it's that much of a modern heresy. I don't think that I've never encountered a person that actually argued for this, but it's the idea of deism. Deism is an Enlightenment philosophy that basically says that there is a God who set us up with natural law and natural order, and then walked away and just kind of lets everything play out. Deism is not very widely held today. Deists reject any miracles, any supernatural intervention that we might claim, or revelations that we might claim. A very famous deist in American history was Thomas Jefferson. If you know a little bit about history, you know about the Jefferson Bible. The Jefferson Bible is just the New Testament. So the New Testament, no Old Testament, just the New Testament, and it takes out all of the deistic claims of Christ, and it takes away all the miracles and all the supernatural things that happen, and basically just shares the morals of Jesus. And so deism is a complete denial of what I would say essentials to the Christian faith. They deny the divinity of Christ. They deny the virgin birth or the resurrection. They deny all three of those, really. And so I think deism is the first on the list to be just so hot it's heresy. It hits the core of the Christian gospel. It denies, to me, three principles alone. That's not even with too deep a thinking that are central to what we believe. The virgin birth, the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, the perfect life, the deistic claims, all of those are denied by deism or deists themselves. And so, yes, I don't think that's really much of a debate that it is too hot, or that it's so hot it's heresy, sorry. And then the next hot take was one that, as a Reformed thinker, Reformed Baptist, this hurts me because it almost makes me feel as if the person's saying God's not enough. And I'm not putting words in their mouth. I'm not saying that's what they say, but it does feel that way. The claim is that in small situations, it's better to pray to saints than to Jesus. And I don't really know what to say. I would put that honestly in an A tier, which to me, it does strike at the core of who God is. God is a figure of comfort and care and love for his people. And yet, the claim is that Christ, or that Christ doesn't have the time to listen to your needs. That Christ doesn't have the time to listen to you in the small things during the day. That we need to be praying to saints instead. And I just wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think that's the nature of God. God is a loving God towards his people, and he wants to see his people flourish and grow, and we should be asking him these things. I think that one thing we need to keep in mind is that God knows what we need before we even ask of it. And us asking it is that self-denial and that submission to the will of God. And so when you believe that God is too busy for you, to me that not only hurts your relationship with God, that hurts your viewpoint of God. If God is too busy, then God cannot be everywhere all at once. God cannot know everything. And so for that, I give it an A tier. I don't think it's heresy because I do know that there are some Christian denominations that believe it, but I do think it is very far in the heterodox tier. It's very, very far away from what I believe is Orthodox Christianity. The final hot take is one that it's probably the spiciest, only because it can be argued many different ways. It's the idea that in the Christian church, there's too much judgment. And I agree. In the Christian church, you see so many people judging others in ways that they should not be judging others. But you also see people that when they are judged according to how we would say it is just to judge, they just complain and say, oh, you're legalistic, you're judging me, blah, blah, blah. Then they point to literally one verse. You know, so I think that we need to nuance with, I agree that you do have a lot of people who judge others on what they wear, on you know, the way that they decide to worship, especially if it's not, like I said, like a tier 2. That, to me, that would be a tier 2 thing. And you do see a lot of judgment, but at the same time, in 1 Corinthians 5:12, Paul does call us to judge others within the church, not just for the sake of the person, but for the sake of the church. We are called to keep each other accountable. That's why church discipline is something that needs to make a rise back. You know, we need to see people who need to repent openly to the church, and because nobody's perfect, and we should be willing to say, "Oh, you've called me out of my sin. I need to repent." And you know, as the people of God, it is okay to judge others with the intention of helping, but not the intention of harming. If you're judging another person because you don't like what they're wearing or you don't like them, and you're calling them out on something falsely, then that whole problem is with you and not with what they're doing or what they're wearing or whatever. And so, as Christians, there is a just judgment that we can make as the church, but I think this person has some merit in their statement that we do judge a little too much in some areas. I don't think we judge enough in others. So for that, because I have a little bit of a nuance with the enough in others category, I'm going to give it a C. I do think it's a good take. I don't think it's heterodox, but I don't necessarily agree with all of it. So I'll give it a C. But you know, as you go throughout your day, think about like some of the implications of these hot takes. Do you hold to some of these hot takes? Do you disagree with me on these hot takes? Are you a deist? Think about what it means to hold to these things and either why you hold to it or why you don't hold to it. Christians are called to be knowledgeable about what they believe, and we should all understand what we believe and why. Too often do I see people who just believe what their grandparents believed, or just believe what their great-grandparents believed, instead of formulating their own opinions, instead of reading the scriptures for themselves. They read it through the one lens they've been taught and then realize, hey, this lens is perfect and right, and I should never think about other things deeply. So judging others, having the sense of being an ambassador for Christ, not killing animals. All of those are interesting hot takes that I was really, really glad to have received. And so if you want to see your take on here, and I can't guarantee, what I do is I put them all on a list, randomize, and then every now and then, like, I'll have a guest on next week I might tailor a couple questions because I know his personal beliefs and preferences. But at the end of the day, it's all about Christian community, talking about the truth, and then making sure the truth is expounded upon. So I really appreciate you guys watching the video. I would love to hear some feedback on maybe where I'm wrong, where you disagree, or maybe where you agree. If you would like to, please like and subscribe the video. It helps to get it out to other people. Please share the video if you think that this is a good video. But I just hope you guys have a fantastic week. I will see you again later. God bless.